Today, the topic today is somewhat unusual topic, and the person who is going to represent this topic is Mike Thomas. If I'm not mistaken, I've met Mike 6 years ago in 2015, right, Mike? When I was in the UK, I think I met you there once, and we just had a short kind of chat together. That was the only,
right, yeah.
yeah, that was the only time when I met you alive. And Mike is basically one of the church leaders in at Ramney Chapel in Cardiff, which is the capital of Wales. And he's been there for the last 15 years, or at least for the last 15 years, he's been helping to lead the church. And also, Mike is working for the Message Trust, which is a Christian charity that tries to help lost people, try to help people in need. And today, basically, we'll talk about the issue of hybrid church. And this is something that we cannot find in the Bible, right, Michael? And yeah, so, but before we get into the issue, into the topic of hybrid church, I think it would be good if you could start with just a definition of what the church is in general, because I believe people in different places might have different understanding of what the church in general is. And then after that, we can move on to hybrid church. So Mike, to you.
Thank you, Victor, for the introduction. Let me just introduce myself a little bit more. I am Paul Thomas's son. You may know or may know that. So I've been to a number of Philadelphia Trust camps over the years, although I think it's been about 25 years since I was in Dumosh with the Philadelphia Trust. But I have been going back and forth to Central and Eastern Europe for the last 25 years, working with Neil and Edina Potts and running summer English camps in Újpest in Budapest. I'm married to a very patient, lovely lady called Jan, and I've got 4 children who keep me busy, also keep my dad busy. So Dad's been out with them today, which is great because I'm away with work at the moment. And as Victor said, I've been going to Ramney Chapel. Well, I've been on the leadership team there for 15 years, but I've been in the church there for 23, 24 years now. And it's very much a community-focused church, based around, it's an independent evangelical church. And yeah, we love our community, and we try and shine the light of Jesus to everyone that we meet. It's interesting that the definition of church, I think we can all have very different ideas of what the church is, but it's anybody who's believed in Jesus and is following God. And so sometimes we can have quite a small definition of what church is, but I think actually it's wider than most of us think. And certainly, the organization that I work for, the Message Trust, we're open to working with anybody who loves Jesus and is passionate about seeing lives transformed and communities restored, really, through Christ-centered mission. So I think church is very broad. We might not agree with how things are done in lots of different churches or traditions, but there's plenty of people around who are followers of Jesus and just want to live for him, hear the gospel, and as I said, see lives transformed. So yeah, that's where I'd start with what church is. Hybrid church, well, we'll get onto that in a moment.
I'm sorry, Mike, just one word that I forgot to say. If during the session anybody would have any questions, please send them to me rather than to Mike, so that not to disturb him during his speech. And then we'll ask all those questions later.
Yeah, please do send in your questions as well. I really love to help anybody and answer any questions. And share any knowledge that I've gained over the last 18 years about what church online or hybrid church or whatever it is that we want to call this looks like. Did you want me to answer the first question, Victor, about what is hybrid church?
Yeah. Generally, why do we have this this term in general? I don't think I've ever heard it even 2 years ago. That's not something that was, even right now, it's not very well a popular term, I would say, at least not in Ukraine. I don't know about other countries. So can you explain why the term appeared and what does it mean?
Absolutely. So it's not a popular phrase really in the UK either. And I wouldn't rush to use the phrase, certainly with what we do in Rumney Chapel. What we've created, I guess, is that, we have our in-person church services that we're able to do now. Thankfully, now restrictions are lifting in Wales. But out of necessity, at the beginning of lockdown, we started doing things online. And really, we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. It was very much, we had 24 hours really to figure out how we were going to stream our services online. It was very much a kind of every single week there were technical problems because everybody was going online at that time. And when we first started, it was again, it was a one-way service that we were providing. So we decided that we would stream our services from home because we weren't allowed in our church buildings, and we would present those on YouTube and on Facebook. And so it wasn't particularly interactive. We would sit at home, we would present stuff, and then maybe people would comment and so on. But it was how we started off doing things. But it was a one-way thing. With hybrid church, the idea is that the people who are engaging with what you're doing online, they're actually part of your church. They're digital members, if you like. And so with any church member that you've got, with anybody that's attending your fellowship, you need to provide some kind of pastoral care and support, and you're able to pray with them and so on. And so hybrid church is that idea that people who are engaging online with what you're doing are actually able to participate, as well as just being people who are able to tune in and see what you're doing. It's very interesting. Tearfund, I don't know if you've heard of the charity, but they did a survey in the middle of 2020, and they looked at the percentage of people in the UK who actually tuned into a church service. And bearing in mind that the usual percentage of people who attend a church service at a minimum of once a month in Britain is 5%. So 5% of the country would attend at least one church service every month. During lockdown, that percentage actually went up to 25%. So 1 in 4 people engaged in some way, whether that was just watching for 10 minutes or whether it was watching for the whole service, and with what the church was doing. And interestingly, between the ages of 18 and 24, that crept up to about 35%. So young people, the hardest to reach demographic, the most, the kind of group of people who are least engaged with church, they were the ones at the beginning of lockdown who engaged with church the most in the UK. So 35% or so. Now that's not stayed the same. It was a big spike and then that's gone down again. But certainly it provided us with the opportunity to think, right, our mission field as a church has actually grown now from this part of Cardiff that we live in, that's got about 4,000 houses, 10,000 people. You know, we're now able to reach the whole of the world. And we saw a massive spike in the amount of engagement that we had as a church, the people who asked us to pray with them and to support them and all of that stuff, which was really great. And you know, that massive spike at the beginning, that's not carried on, but we still have a number of people who actually only engage online with us. I'll tell you a quick story about a couple called Peter and Margaret. Peter and Margaret live about 150 kilometers away from Cardiff. And Peter used to be a member of Rumney Chapel 30 years ago. And they moved away 30 years ago and live in Moreton-on-the-Marsh, for those of you who know where that is. And their church at the beginning of lockdown closed their doors and said, we are not reopening until all of COVID is done. There were no online services, no Zoom meetings, literally nothing. And so they looked around for a church to engage with. And now Peter and Margaret are members of our church. They're online members. They come every single Sunday. They give faithfully to the church as well. They take part in our midweek prayer meetings that we have on Zoom and also live in person at the same time. So that hybrid model of being able to engage in something online, but also in person at the same time. And they are a lovely couple. And actually, I've been able to go and visit them on my travels and have a cup of coffee with them and pray with them in person and actually meet them in person for the first time. But they are, you know, as engaged in Rumney Chapel and what we're doing as a church as anybody else. It's interesting as well. You know, somebody said one little virus, this little kind of COVID virus, has closed down the whole church. Whereas the truth is now that every or almost every home now has access to church because of online services. So it's opened up a whole new world of possibilities for us as the church worldwide to go into people's homes that we didn't have before. But it's not just about them watching something online or, you know, watching a YouTube video or a Facebook video. It's creating opportunities for them to engage with what you're doing as a church and be part of what you're doing. And so it's no longer a one-way street. It has to be a two-way street for a proper hybrid church to work in our 21st century network society. It's almost like church without walls. I think that's another way of describing it. Sorry, and that actually gives you a lot of problems as well as a lot of opportunities. You know, so what we are constantly thinking about as a church leadership team is how do we make sure that people like Peter and Margaret get to participate in what we're doing on a Sunday morning or midweek as well. And so, you know, whether that's they're able to join a Zoom call and then we put that up on the screen in the church service, so they're able to read some scripture or to pray for us and with us, or even share a message. So it's not, as I said, it's not that one-way thing. They're involved in our corporate acts of worship as much as anybody else who is in-house is able to do that. And also, it's not just about Sunday mornings. You know, we've got a whole kind of week's program that we do with the church, as I'm sure all of yours do. So, you know, we've got the usual Sunday services, we have prayer meetings and Bible studies. You know, you're able to join people across the world at conferences like this, whether it's a youth group or an Alpha course that we've run online, or any other courses to introduce people to Christianity. Just another example really of how we've used online hybrid church with young people when COVID started, we actually put together a program of 6 nights a week for our young people. So we had a worship night every week where one of our musicians from the church were able just to get together online and worship. We had what we called campfire. So we sent everybody mugs and packets of hot chocolate and whipped cream and so on. And we had a virtual campfire every week. And it was just an opportunity to have some fellowship with young people. We had our usual Friday night youth group with online games and so on, and being creative with that. There's a lot of things that you can do on a Zoom call to have fun, prayer meetings. And then one of my favorite things, we actually set up our own Minecraft server. So we actually built our church on Minecraft and had meetings in the church on there. So, we thought a little bit outside the box, and I was able to be involved in that fully because I was on furlough, suspended from work because of COVID for a year. And so it was great to be involved and see what we could do from the journey of that first Sunday with me and a laptop in my house to them being able to provide, whole services and prayer meetings and so on, interactive online, and actually create an opportunity for, community engagement and for fellowship there. So hybrid church, I don't think there's one particular definition that suits it. Everybody's fellowship is going to look different, but it's basically, again, that opportunity for community together in a network 21st century church.
May I have a quick question then? You said that it's not a one way, but can you explain in more details? For example, if you stream your Sunday service, streaming is just basically one way, presentation of something. How can people be involved except from watching? What else can they do?
So one thing that we started a couple of months ago was that every Sunday now we have an online digital host. So somebody from the church who actually takes responsibility for interacting with the people who join online. And so, we make sure as a priority that everybody who says something online during the service is responded to. So if somebody logs in and says, "Hi, I'm watching from, I don't know, Caerphilly," then our online host would respond to them and go, "Oh, great that you're able to join with us today. Thanks so much. If you've got anything that you want to, for us to pray for, then we would love to pray with you." And then somebody else might join from elsewhere, and so everybody gets a personal response to what, if they comment. And we have people who every week we have new people who come online, and some of them stick around and stay, others don't. And then at the end of the service, the online host would send the leadership team from the church a list of people who have attended online church, and then we would then make sure that every Sunday afternoon we contact all of those people and say thanks so much for joining us, and start a conversation with them. And from that, we've actually had people who have joined our church. There's a couple called Ben and Asmina, and they were watching online for a couple of weeks. They just moved to the area. They were looking for a church to join, and so they kind of logged on to one of our services, and I started talking to them, invited them to the in-person services, and they came, and they're now members of our church. Whereas if they'd have just watched, I don't think, and we hadn't spoken to them, I don't think that they would have joined our church in person. I think they would have just watched and maybe then moved on to somewhere else. But that personal thing where you interact with them, to be honest, most of our interaction takes place outside of the Sunday service. So, with community groups that we have through the week, we've got a number of hybrid community groups. So one meets on a Monday morning, There's about 8 people that meet in person, and we've got a big television that we set up in the church and a Zoom call. And so people, sit in a circle in the church, the television is there, they can participate in the Bible study and the prayer time as much as anybody else. And so that's a great way of interaction. But yeah, it's that thing that if you turn up to a church service, you want fellowship, you want interaction, and so having somebody dedicated to do that every week, we found has been really fruitful.
So from your description, it sounds like it works quite well for your church. But do you think that's like a universal formula that should be applied to many churches? Does it mean that we all should become hybrid churches, at least in this period of time?
I think there's definitely a benefit for it. We've been quite fortunate in that we were given a grant from the Welsh Assembly government to do online youth work during the pandemic. And so we used that grant to buy equipment. So we bought cameras, we bought a very good PC with good, excellent specs. We upgraded our internet in the church. And so, we've got a lot of equipment to enable us to do hybrid church really, really well. And one of the comments is always, oh, well, we can't afford that. We don't have the technical knowledge. We don't know what we're doing. Like, is there a purpose for us doing that? But to be honest, if you've got a mobile phone, you can stream your services directly from your phone. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth giving it a try and seeing if it helps with your church. One of the benefits actually is that people can see what you do on a Sunday morning. If you've got, in Britain, as I said, 95% of people don't normally go to church. So actually they don't know what happens on a Sunday morning. For us here at this conference, we could walk into any church and kind of understand what's going on. But for those 95%, they have no idea. So if we can showcase what we do as a church and they can go, right, that's what happens on a Sunday morning, then they feel more comfortable coming into your church in person as well. So I would say, give it a go. I think it's definitely worth it. We've doubled in size as a church during lockdown, and 50% of that growth has been through people engaging with online hybrid church, and some of them have turned up and are now members in person as well.
Okay, then the next question would be how to realize that. Are there like some challenges or particular difficulties to kind of convert traditional church into a hybrid church, or what should be done in order to avoid certain mistakes and to do it more effectively?
Yeah, some of the concerns from members of our church were that they could see the benefit of it during COVID times when the church building was closed, but now we can meet in person. Why do we still need to stream? We're like, what, surely what we're doing is stopping people from attending in person. If I can wake up at 5 to 11 on a Sunday morning and I can just, lie in bed with my cup of coffee and my phone and I can watch church online, I can be lazy about that. I can not participate fully in church life and so on. So one of the kind of problems that I think you have to face is that people might not see the benefit of it when you start talking about it as a church. We've responded to that with stories like Peter and Margaret and Ben and Asmina, and we've got lots of other people as well who actually it's really, really helped. Not only that, we've got another couple who have joined our church, and Helen is very ill and can't leave the house. She leaves the house maybe once a week, But she's an active participant in our Sunday morning services. So, you know, my response to that problem that people see is look at how many people actually it's helping. It's a really great thing. The other problem might be the purchase of technology and so on. But as I said, if you've got a mobile phone with a decent camera on there, then you can put that on a tripod, put it at the front of your church, and stream your services. And you don't need technical know-how. You just need to know how to go live on Facebook. So it's not expensive. It's not, you don't need all of the setup to start doing it. It's just a good thing to do right at the beginning. But getting people's heads around, how technology is important and getting people to understand that. I heard this statistic the other day that it took 75 years for 50 million people to have a television. So that's quite a long time, 75 years for 50 million people to have a television. It took 9 months for 50 million people to have Twitter. It took 19 days for 50 million people to have Pokemon Go. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's a great online game. It took, let's have a look at the 24 hours for 50 million people to watch the Facebook video, Chewbacca's mum. It's really funny. You should definitely Google it. But yeah, so 50 million people, like we've got used to television, we've got used to radio, we've got used to, kind of that traditional technology, but actually getting people to understand the reach of technology and streaming online services, that can be quite a battle. But sharing statistics like that, actually help us to understand the importance and how the digital age that we live in actually can be a real benefit to the church.
But then what should be done to the Christians who would say, okay, fine, I'm happy to watch the streaming services online, and I'm feeling fine. Why should I go in person to the church then?
We've not particularly seen that at Romney Chapel. For I guess Peter and Margaret might fall into that category, that they could find a local church that's around the corner from them. They do have mobility issues, so actually being able to watch from home, is a great benefit to them. I would encourage any church that's got people who are engaging online to have that conversation with them, because there is no substitute for meeting together in person. And I think AB mentioned it yesterday in his talk about, the benefits of breaking bread together and seeing people and that kind of, the fellowship that you have. But we live in a digital world where actually some people don't leave their homes, whether it's through illness or whether it's through choice. And so it's another mission field for us to join. But if you've got people who are engaging with what you're doing week in, week out, and they could be going to a local church, I would have that conversation with them and say, you shouldn't be coming to us. You should be going to that church down the road that actually is really great, and you can, physically meet with them. I think, having open and honest conversations with people about that is really important. A friend of mine, Matt Lewis, who's one of the elders in Bethesda Church in Dinas Powys in South Wales, he was telling me recently about a man who came to faith but works on ships and sails all over the world. Now, for him, there's no way that he could join a local church and be there regularly, but he tunes in every single Sunday and takes part as well in their hybrid church service that they have in Dinas Powys. And so I think, looking at who the online part of your church is looking to serve, you know, the benefits of that vastly outweigh the kind of negatives of, oh, what if you get somebody who's just being lazy? What if you get somebody who just wants to sit on their sofa and not participate in church? Our experience has been that we're getting a whole load of people engaging who wouldn't normally come to church. And some of them will then turn up in person. Others will be happy to carry on online, and that's their choice. But it's more than what they were going to do, more than what they were doing before.
Quite a few questions appeared, and there were a few that I could combine into one, basically the same question in different words. So is there a role for such hybrid church in the future when the pandemic is over? Do you think it will still remain a hybrid church, or should we go back to traditional way of services only?
We had this conversation as a church leadership team about a month ago about whether we would stop our online side of what we do, and we've decided not to stop that because we've got 25 or so people who engage with church every single week who wouldn't normally. And lots of those are non-Christian people or people on the fringe or backslidden Christians. And so for us, all the kind of hybrid church does is it increases our reach as a church to get the gospel out to as many people as possible. And that's never a bad thing. It does take a bit of extra work to do, you know, and to make sure that you're pastorally caring for those people who are engaging with what you're doing. But I certainly think, you know, in the 21st century, you know, we have got this great big mission field, this opportunity to be in everybody's home that's got the internet and to share the good news with them. And so for me, it's a great opportunity to do that. Why would we stop? The challenge is making sure that those people are looked after, that those people are encouraged to engage fully with the life of the church, and to make sure that, you know, we're leading those people in the same way that we would lead people who are physically present in church. But, you know, why would you not? For those people who are disabled, who can't get out, for those people who live on ships and can't travel, you know, for those people who are just not sure if they want to turn up to a church service and because they're not sure what it's all about, you know, more opportunities to share the gospel with more people. Let's go for it.
Yeah, and in support to your words, I'll just read a few comments from Roger regarding this. Roger wrote that hybrid church for us enables people who cannot come out to the church building can take part. Basically the same what you said about older or like people with disabilities. We're on teaching and prayer session in person and on Zoom at the same time. And one benefit in Poland has been that small churches who would normally not have regular teaching meetings have been able to take part in regular teaching for the past year, have a choice of 3 different teaching meetings each week. So indeed, there are visible benefits of continuing having such a hybrid church. But then a question, for example, what to do about some church things that can only be done alive, for example, the Lord's Supper. How do you deal with this issue?
Yeah, so we encourage people still to take part in that at home, as well as in person. So, you know, people kind of prepare some bread and wine at home, and when we take that together in person, then they do that at home at the same time. Now, I understand that people might have an issue with that, and that's something for your church to deal with. But we've decided that actually, this is the way that we're going to do it, because if people didn't do that and kind of just looked at what we were doing, they wouldn't get that kind of fellowship experience and so on. So I, as I said, I understand that people might have an issue with that, but that's what we've decided to do as a church. You can't replace meeting in person and the kind of experience that you have of corporate worship, and all of that, the great things that come with that. Baptisms is another one. You can't do that online. So we would, I guess, if people ever came to us and said we want to get baptized, we'd be like, travel to Rumney Chapel, go to a local church that's close to you, and join that church and so on. It's not about building Rumney Chapel; it's about building the church.
The question that, to be honest, I'm not sure I totally understand. What is done differently to bridge face-to-face online?
Say that again, sorry, Victor.
What is done differently to bridge face-to-face online?
To bridge, or is that what you said?
Yeah.
Bridge. I think it's a lot harder to engage with people online. When we were just online, the camera was there in front of you. You were sat at a laptop, or you stood in the church looking at the camera, and so you get your undivided attention to people who are online, and you could always say, oh, type in the comments, what do you think about that? Or if you agree, like type amen or a thumbs up, and just to kind of promote some interactivity on the chat. Now that we're both online and in person, sometimes you can forget about the people who are watching online, and so it's difficult to do both of those things at the same time. And so we've got a big sticker on our lectern to say, don't forget people are watching online. And so as you're preaching, as you're sharing, making sure that as well as looking around the room at the people who are there in person, you're looking at the camera and saying to people at home, what do you think about that, and still doing all of those things. And making sure that people are still able to participate in what you're doing. So there is a difference between, just doing online stuff and just doing in-person stuff, and then doing those two things together. It is quite difficult sometimes.
But for you, do you prioritize? Do you think the meeting on like live is more important than the online stream or translation?
No, I think we've made the decision as a church that actually, the people who are watching online are just as important as the people who are in person. And I guess in some ways, sometimes the people online are more important, because they are the ones who are more likely to be visitors to your church. They're the ones who are more likely to respond to the gospel than a church full of Christians. They're the ones who have made the effort to find us online and to tune in and so on. So I would say we treat them the same, but we have that extra thing of the online host to be able to make sure that people are looked after and responded to online, as well as then followed up on Sunday afternoon.
Then I would like to ask this question. The Lord said that basically we must deny ourselves and follow him. So basically it means we must pay a certain price if we want to follow him. People who go to the church, they do pay a certain price. They spend their time, they spend their money to get physically to the place. People who watch online, they pay very little, if any, price. And don't you think it would weaken people's spiritual level if you just not encourage people to come like physically to the meetings, or don't you think it's more important to encourage people to go to the church physically?
So we have we encourage people to give their time and financially, whether they're in person or online. So we have an online giving page that people regularly give to, that who are online engagers with what we're doing, online members. They're the ones who are promoting our online services, and so every Saturday, regularly we have about 10 people who kind of share what we're doing as a church, and so they're inviting their friends to it. They give their time in the same way that people who attend the church physically would give their time. Their mission field is online, and that's no less a valid mission field than the street that you live on. There's lots of people who have online friends and online communities that they engage with, which are no less real than sitting at a coffee shop and having a cup of coffee with a friend. And so for them to be able to share what we're doing, and to, for then those people who are fully engaged with online life to tune in to us on a Sunday morning, or to you on a Sunday morning, is no difference. I guess the kind of physically being around the church and doing things like being on the cleaning rota and so on, that's what they can't do. But I'm not quite sure that taking up your cross and following Jesus is about physically helping in a church building. It's about every part of your life, and how you engage with church, I think, is somewhat linked to that, but maybe not fully.
Yeah, I totally agree about this last part. I'm just saying from my own experience that when we just started online services, there were many factors that distracted from really watching or being like fully present on the service, because you want a cup of tea, or your child want to distract you, or suddenly you think about something else and you are distracted, and then you lost the thought of a sermon, or you don't really sync with the singers, and that can become really a habit. And so how do you, there was another question, how do you encourage people who basically can attend physically, but they still prefer to stay online? What do you say to them? Do you encourage them to come?
So just with the engagement thing, so every week I would be either running the church service from home, or from the church building when they were allowed to be open. And my wife was sat at home watching the television with I've got 4 children, and my children really struggled to stay focused on the church service, and to fully kind of participate in that for an hour, because normally when you're at home and you're watching television, you can go and make a cup of tea, or you can go to the loo and all of those things. And so it really frustrated my wife, to the point that she would be like, "Shh, we're in church, be quiet." And I don't know what the answer is to that. I just know that when I'm sat in church on a Sunday morning and I'm listening to a preacher, sometimes I find myself thinking about what's for dinner, oh, I've got to remember to do this. And where you are physically doesn't always mean that you're more engaged. I think you would struggle more at home. But again, I would go back to that thing of saying there are people who physically can't be in the church, and so we're able to provide a service for them. The other thing is that we have people who serve on a Sunday morning. We have our kids club, we have a youth class. We have people who are on the door, kind of a welcome team, and they don't always get to listen and participate in what's going on. So, we find it really useful that they can go home, go onto YouTube and watch the service and listen to the sermon, and, get something from that. So yeah, there's good and bad points about that. Whether we should encourage people who are engaged online to attend physically, if they're local to us, then by all means, you know, I always invite them to come along to what we're doing if they're able to do that. And again, you know, for people who are further afield, you know, that conversation of, it's great that you join us on a Sunday morning, but have you thought about, you know, attending the church down the road that would be really, really great for you, and getting to know some Christians in your local area? And some people do that. Other people just go, oh, we're really happy watching online. If that's the case, we're happy for them to watch.
Thanks, Mike. I think our time is over. Just one last very quick question, yes or no. Do you think this whole pandemic situation bring more damage to the church or benefit to the church?
I can't answer yes or no to that. I think some churches have really been challenged through the pandemic and have faced it head on and have really engaged in a new way with communities. And I think some churches have been a bit scared about it and kind of gone, we don't know what we're doing. We just want things to be back to normal. I don't think there is a normal anymore. And so, you know, the way that we look at church needs to change, and the way that we engage with our community needs to change. So I think it brings unique challenges to every church, but we've got to face those head on and look for new opportunities and new ways to share the good news.
Thanks a lot, Mike. We have no more time for more questions, so let me just close in short prayer.